All right, so with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Katie Muse. So Katie is the co-founder of Ambulatory Innovations. So her and her teammate Michelle work together and have been working together since 2019. They were an Idea Challenge winner. They went through the boot camp. They learned a lot throughout the boot camp, and they've been doing great things, winning competitions, getting additional funding for their idea, working with the Nerve Center at UMass Lowell for testing their product. So again, it's my pleasure to introduce Katie Muse to the bootcamp this evening. So welcome, Katie. We're excited to hear your presentation. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Holly. It's nice to see everyone again.
You too.
All right. So hi, everyone. Like Holly said, my name's Katie Muse. Unfortunately, Michelle couldn't be here. She got tied up with patients at work. So this first slide is just a brief overview of our team. Our company is called Ambulatory Innovations. Our product is the Community Ambulation Tool Mat, also known as the CAT mat for short. So I graduated, I'm a Devil River Hawk. I got my exercise physiology degree in 2017 and doctorate of physical therapy in 2020. Michelle has the same record. And then we have a chemical engineer on our team, Nick Draper, who does a lot of the research and product development with our chemical engineer. He's a US Navy veteran. And then we have Will, who is studying marketing. So he does more of our social media and handles more of the outreach to people on those different types of platforms. So we have a good mixture, which is really important for having in a team because you can't do everything, you can't specialize in each field. So you want to make sure when you're looking for teammates, you're searching out those skills that you lack basically. And then it's also great to have someone who does specialize in the same field as you to bounce ideas off of each other, because you guys will speak the same language and know all the technical terms, which is really great to have in a teammate. So
Katie,
just wanted to.
Katie, can I interrupt quickly? Would you mind just
Sure.
Into the formal presentation mode?
Sure. Okay.
So if you go to, I think, slideshow at the top. Yeah, and then just this from beginning. And then I think that will enlarge it a little bit. Yes, perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so just next slide. Okay, so this is just an overview of what our first project is. So we're working on creating 1 square foot mats that simulate various outdoor terrains. So the mats will interlock to form a walkway that physical therapists can use to train patients to walk on different outdoor surfaces. And it can be as long or as wide as desired. So I overheard in one of the presentations earlier talking about simplicity of the product and convenience is key. And that is definitely something you want to explore when you're doing your customer discovery interviews of what is the most convenient way that your end users will use your product, and finding out how and what modifications you need to make to your product so that it's easiest for them to use. So we were the winner of one of the honorable mention prizes in the 2019 DifferenceMaker Idea Challenge. Since then, we've gone on to do quite a few different competitions, and we have won quite a few of them. So something you want to do for competitions, obviously you guys have all participated in DifferenceMaker and done well, but going forward, you really want to practice your timing. I know when we competed at DifferenceMaker, there were quite a few teams who were going overtime, and we've seen that at other competitions, and it just leaves kind of a bad impression in the judges' minds if they're having to cut you off early. So that's something you want to do. And then when prepping for the competition, you want to memorize your script, but make sure you're not sounding too robotic. Make sure it's coming off as natural, and that way you can be relaxed. Something we found really helpful for different competitions is to trial practice questions. So what me and Michelle have done is we've created our own questions of what we think the judges will ask us. Then we've also asked people who are familiar with our product and our company to come up with practice questions for us. And then it's also a good idea to practice delivering your presentations to people who have no idea about your field and see what questions they come up with. Because we have people who get our idea right off the bat and they really like it. And then there's always at least one person who's like, what's going on? What are you trying to do? Even now, like we've revised our presentation so many times. In the last application we submitted, we got a lot of positive feedback, and then we had one judge who just really didn't get the idea. So it's really good to talk to those people too, to find out how you can connect with them going forward. On that note, you always want to ask from the judges for feedback, regardless of the results, because that'll help you prep for the future competitions. So even if you do win that first place prize, find out what they think you did really well and what they think you could have done better, because that'll help you win more competitions in the future. So one of the things we participated in was iCore Spark program. So that is really great for helping with making your business model. For that program, you want to arrive open to learn and prepared to modify your value proposition several times, is what we have found. And remember, you can't make everyone happy. So there's always going to be at least one person telling you your value proposition isn't right or it needs to be modified. But always remember, you know your product and your goals better than anyone. So always be open to feedback, but always remember, you know what your mission is. So for these competitions, a lot of times we get asked, like, how do you find out about these? Mostly we found out about them through DifferenceMaker, through connections like Holly and Ha emailing us about competitions. And then also ask. Feel free to ask mentors that you've met through different competitions, different programs. Just reach out and say, hey, here's what we're looking for. Have you heard anything? If you do hear anything going forward, please let us know. And then sometimes with competitions, sometimes there's a ton of them, sometimes there's only a few. When there's a bunch to choose from, that's great that you have options, but there's only so much time in a day. So sometimes you need to pick and choose what competitions you compete in. So when it comes to that, you want to be evaluating your company's needs. So are you looking for cash? Is that the most important thing to your company right now? Or would prizes be more important? So if you're looking at an award that has $2,000 cash versus $5,000 in legal counsel, you want to be talking with your teammates and constantly evaluating what's your most current up-to-date needs. And then some competitions offer connections with different mentors, which can be great for your team. And then some even just the notoriety. So saying we beat MIT on their home turf really gets people's attention. So that was a really good competition for us to choose to compete in, especially for Beantown Throwdown. That is a popularity contest. So it's based on how many people in the crowd will vote for you. So that was a really fun one to do and a really quick and easy application and presentation. So you also want to be evaluating what's the effort required versus the chances of winning. So if it's like a one-page write-up for a small prize, I would recommend always doing those because they're just so quick and easy, especially once you've been doing a bunch of competitions, versus that 20-page report for like a multi-$1,000 prize. So something like VentureWell is very involved, but they have really good payout, really good workshops, and then good opportunities going forward in the program. You can win much higher prizes. So that's definitely one to keep an eye out for, and it's worth the time if you think you can win. But again, it all depends on your goals and what you're looking for your company. So something we had heard of at UMass Lowell, but didn't really know too much about, was the Nerve Lab, which we have been prototyping in. So when we started talking to people about our idea, we had found out about the Nerve Lab, and for our testing procedures, we wanted a walkway of grass, gravel, and sand, and the Nerve Lab has 2 of the 3 and has all the testing equipment we need. So it was a really great place for us to do our prototyping. So make sure you're asking around because you might not be aware of all the opportunities offered on campus. Even if you've heard of certain places, just let people know what your needs are and they can connect you with people who can help. And if you guys have any questions on any of the competitions, feel free to reach out to me either via email or ask questions at the end. So something we've done recently is we've incorporated our company, filed trademark and product logo. So we've got our trademarks approved so far, been working on our non-provisional patent. And then obviously we're keeping prototyping because that's a long and lengthy process. So for problems we've encountered with incorporation, I know this is something we had mentioned to Holly. So S Corp requires additional paperwork and our legal counsel didn't complete it and we were under the impression they did. So if you are looking at incorporating your company, make sure you're looking into all those extra steps that you might not know about. And even if you are working with experienced legal counsel, they might be leaving out information that they think you have or forgetting to mention it to you. So make sure you're doing your due diligence and double checking on that information on your own as well. On that note, finding good and affordable legal counsel takes a lot of time. So when you're looking at things like patenting and trademarking, and most of you don't have too much funding right now, you want to make sure you start looking at that early so you can start comparing prices and figuring out what your company can afford. So in our situation with the S Corp, we actually had our tax professional assist us to try and correct our company. So we're still working on our incorporation. On that note, also taxes, there's different due dates for companies versus individuals. So we ran into that problem where I thought the tax date was just the normal individual due date, and it turned out it was a couple months before. So when you get to that level, you definitely want to be looking into company specific tax dates and things like that. So something we ran into with customer discovery interviews was in the beginning, we had a big problem with leading the witness. So I know you guys, I've seen a couple surveys that you've included in your presentations. So you want to learn how to ask questions appropriately to get that accurate data. So asking more broad and open questions. So we started out with things like, do you think gate training methods could be improved? Which most people said yes to, versus more helpful question to really help you get that information you're looking for is what problems are you currently facing during treatments that you wish could be resolved? So you're there to solve their pain point. So you need to identify what their pain points are so you know how to market and create a product they're going to buy. So other things we learned through DifferenceMaker and doing other competitions is how to think more like an entrepreneur. Michelle and I originally came up with the idea for the cat mat, and we had that clinician background, so we were just thinking like clinicians. We were thinking about the patient, about functional outcomes, and that's something we're still working through to this day, and that's something that workshops are very helpful with. So you want to learn to ask more business-based questions and to modify the questions you're asking based on who you're speaking with. So if you're speaking with a physical therapist, you do want to have more of that clinician focus. Whereas if you're speaking with the financial or the case manager, you want to focus more on what's the reimbursement looking like and how is this actually going to work for the company as a whole. Because the point of healthcare is to help patients, but also to make money. So creating a good value proposition, we had a lot of modifications to make to our value proposition in the beginning, and I'll speak more about that on the next slide. So this is copied from one of our old business canvas models. So We identified the pain point. There is no device that mimics outdoor terrains such as sand, gravel, grass, etc., which limits patients' functional outcomes. So the outcomes drive referrals, which directly impacts revenue for the different clinics. So our value proposition simply is that the CAT mat increases functional outcomes, which increases referrals, resulting in increased revenue. And it works this way for all of our customer segments. So I included on the next slide, this is just a more lengthy example of our outpatient versus our inpatient value propositions. So when you guys go forward, if you want to use this as a reference to maybe thinking more about like pain points and each step of your product and how it relates to providing value to the customer and the end user. So for DifferenceMaker, we just wanted to touch upon some of the challenges. I know I already talked about thinking more business-based as opposed to solely patient care-based. And like I said, how to find that middle ground and changing and tailoring your presentation depending on who you're talking to. Other things we ran into was how to prototype. We used the lab on North Campus a lot in the beginning for 3D printing failures or 3D printing, which ended up failing. So be prepared to make a lot of modifications to your prototype. You might think you found a great, awesome thing that's going to work, and then it just ends up failing. But the good thing is then you know to cross that off your list and that you have to move on and find something new. So it's good to find those out as quickly as possible so then you can re-envision your idea and how you're going to create it. Another thing we've run into is funding. Again, reaching out to DifferenceMaker has been great for finding new competitions and finding new funding, whether that be through free services or through cash-based prizes. And I know DifferenceMaker has already been helping you with the business model canvas, creating that through the boot camp, which is very helpful. You're going to go through a lot of different versions of that. So it's good to be starting early so that you can work on it. So for our experience with customer discovery interviews, you want to reach out to as many people as you can. I would suggest at this time, consider using your student email, especially when you're talking to alumni, especially because it gives off less of a spam vibe. If you just see a bunch of different emails coming from a random company you've never heard of, they might not open it. Whereas if they recognize the UMassLowell email, they'll be more likely to take a look and respond. So we've had good luck with using that. Reach out to your professors to ask for contact. So we were in the physical therapy department, so we asked our different professors, who can we talk to? Like, who do you recommend? And they usually have contact information like email or phone number, which is great. And then what we've been doing more recently is when we do a customer discovery interview, we ask for 3 to 5 referrals. So that just means you're saying, okay, who else would you recommend we talk to about our product and their experience in the physical therapy field or case management field? So that can help you with getting more contacts and spreading that customer discovery base. So something else we've done is you want to interview people along the chain and not just the end user or the customer. So for example, like I've been saying, physical therapists and patients, they're the ones that would be directly interacting with our device. Whereas someone like a case manager or a clinic owner is going to have different goals than that physical therapist or than that patient. They're going to have more business-based goals. So you want to be talking to these people to find out how you can meet their needs. And then if you're stuck, just remember you can always ask for help. DifferenceMaker, again, like I've said, is a great resource. So they can usually either assist you with those questions and needs that you have, or they'll refer you to someone who can. And they can refer you to different workshops, which is great. iCorp was such a great program, and I highly recommend applying to that because that's great for developing customer discovery interviews and questions for them. So, and then customer discovery is an ongoing thing. We have, I think we've done maybe 100 interviews, and that's something that's constant. You got to keep going with it all the time, especially now that life is slowly returning back to normal. Hopefully, the response is going to get better, because during COVID, everything was shut down. So we had to kind of accept customer discovery interviews weren't really going to happen too much, especially in the healthcare provider world. But as things return to normal, you should have more responses from reaching out to different individuals about customer discovery. So here's some tips for success. So for customer discovery, you want to find a common ground with the potential customers. Make sure you are listening to what they're saying, not just going in with your own ideas and what you expect them to tell you and want them to tell you. Make sure you're really taking in and reevaluating and comparing what you wanted to hear and expected to hear versus what you actually did hear. And then definitely do your homework, research, do a quick Google search on the person and company that you're going into, because they're going to appreciate that you know those little personal details and that you can tailor the interview towards that company. And you want to keep trying. So if you don't get a response initially, what we try to do is have a reminder. So we'll send out 10 emails at a time, make a reminder for a couple weeks from now. If you haven't heard from these individuals, email them again, see if you can get them to contact you. Especially sometimes people open an email, make a mental note, oh, I'll respond to that later, and then forget. So you want to give them that second chance of maybe you could have a really great interview with this person. Just send that second email. It only takes a couple of seconds. Something we found really useful is using tools like Google Calendar. So it's great for creating events and setting reminders for important tasks, especially as your company becomes more developed. The tasks really start to add up, and you'll have things that you need to do throughout the year. So that's really great. And then we created a company specific calendar, so all teammates can be automatically invited to all events that we list for the company, which I found to be really helpful. And then using a feature like Google Drive, you want to create folders and keep them organized. It becomes really important as your company grows, being able to track all those important documents. And we always save our presentations so that we can kind of take and grow upon each presentation and make it better than the last one. More tips for success. We found weekly meetings to be really great. So we designate a time that we're going to connect with everyone as a team. Even if it's really quick and we don't have a lot of updates to give that week, it's also a great community builder, checking in with the team members, and then also figuring out where we're going to go for next week so that we have made more progress. And then you want to be making sure you're recognizing each member's strengths and weaknesses, and then recognize these may change over time. So Michelle is better at PowerPoint design, so I try to contribute more to the content in the beginning because I know she'll be working on that end design, which is really important for different competitions. Something we found really great as well is overestimate the amount of time you need to complete a project. You never know when things are going to crop up, surprises, and such like a year-long pandemic. So you want to be making sure you're giving yourself as much extra time to create a project, and that way you'll give yourself a lot of extra time to make revisions. And then just remember, once a difference maker, always a difference maker. So we've been part of this group for a couple years, and again, that's where we get a lot of our opportunities and connections from. So make sure you're utilizing that to its fullest ability. And here's just our contact information. If you want to check out our website or social media accounts, that's where we post our most recent updates. So, and thank you guys for having me present.
Thank you, Katie. That was wonderful. Really nice presentation.
Yeah, very good. Very
Tried
good.
to fit it all in.
Yeah, no, that was perfect and great timing. We still have a couple minutes for Q&A. I was chatting in just some of the points that I really appreciated you kind of pulling in and talking about. So as far as the students here, any questions or comments for Katie, whether it's about the boot camp, difference maker process and so forth.
I don't really have a question, but I just want to say it's great to finally meet you. I've been talking to Nick. I don't know if he's talked about us at all, but
Yeah.
he does talk about you quite a bit. So it's great to finally meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you too. Yeah, he's been telling us that he was in contact with one of the Difference Maker teams.
Excellent. Questions, comments? So Katie, I guess I'll ask a question. So the students right now, they're sort of at the boot camp stage. So at this point, if you can kind of think back a few years ago when you were in the boot camp, what was your biggest takeaway or what advice do you have for them throughout this process?
So my biggest takeaway was examining more of that business aspect, like I said. So thinking more about the target market and how you are going to start actually putting your product out into the world. So I remember it talks about what's your total market and then getting smaller and smaller until you see where you're going to start and what's realistic. Because even if in the US there's thousands of physical therapy clinics, you're not going to be talking to all of them when you start out as a small startup company. So more of examining what's realistic for you to expect when you're at the stage to start marketing your product was my biggest takeaway. Because Michelle and I both didn't have any business experience. So that was the most important for us, is to start thinking more like a business.
Awesome. Thank you.
May I ask one question too?
Sure.
So Katie didn't mention this, but while she was a graduate student and doing Difference Maker, she was also an RA, and she also spent lengthy periods of time in other parts of the country because that was just part of the program and part of the work that she did. And so, given all of that you had going on, I was hoping that you could offer everyone a little bit of an idea as to how you managed your time with Difference Maker and the myriad of other things you had going on, because even I am amazed.
Thanks. Yeah, so it was definitely tough. And that's why one of the most important tips, I think, is to overestimate the time you need to complete a project. And I try to use that not just with Difference Maker or whatever company or product you're developing, but also with other aspects of my life. So when you run into that emergency, you have all that extra time factored in. And I use things like Google Calendar to make sure I set reminders of when certain things need to be done and projects need to be started. Because if really organization is key and time management is key. So if you don't have that, it would be really hard to be successful with creating your product and starting that business. So that's how I managed it, because I was fairly busy as a doctorate student. So that's just really important now to get started, keep things organized from the beginning, develop a good system, and then ask for help if time management isn't one of your things. Like, that's something you can work on, and ask for help with learning about different tools and how to manage your time better.
Thank you so much.
Excellent. Good question and great advice, Katie. We're here at noontime, so I just wanted to thank you again, Katie, for volunteering your time and coming back as a successful Difference Maker team to share about your experiences and to sort of be an example for these upcoming successful Difference Maker students. So join me in applauding Katie and Michelle and their whole team on all their successes so far. So thank you very much, Katie.
Thank you, and good luck to everyone.
Thank you.